You know what they say about first impressions at intergalactic dive bars? They're usually wrong, but they're spectacularly wrong. And if you're expecting some grand tale of cosmic heroism from the get-go, well, buckle up, Buttercup. Because this story starts with the most human thing imaginable. A guy trying way too hard to impress a woman who could probably bench press his entire ego. The Rusty Photon wasn't exactly the kind of establishment that attracted the cream of civilized society. Located in the armpit of the Kepler station's commercial district, it was the sort of place where the artificial gravity worked most of the time. The air recyclers gave everything a vaguely metallic taste. And the bartender was a reformed pirate who'd lost his left tentacle in what he claimed was a disagreement over artistic differences. In other words, it was perfect for Lieutenant Commander Rex Hartwell of the Terran Colonial Marines. Rex had that particular swagger that comes from surviving 3 tours in the Outer Rim conflicts and developing an impressive collection of both medals and stories that got about 10% more heroic with each telling. Tonight, he was working on a particularly embellished version of the Battle of Vega Prime, while nursing something that tasted like antifreeze mixed with regret. "So there I was," Rex was saying to anyone within earshot, which at this hour meant a very patient Regellian merchant and a service droid that had been programmed to nod at appropriate intervals. Completely surrounded by Kytherian shock troops. Had to be at least 50 of them, maybe 60. "Try 12, came a dry voice from the end of the bar. Rex paused mid-gesture, his drink halfway to his lips. The voice belonged to a woman who looked like she'd been poured into her civilian jumpsuit and forgot to mention it to the jumpsuit. She had the kind of casual confidence that suggested she could kill you with a spoon and still make it to her dinner reservation on time. "Excuse me?" Rex said, turning to face her with that particular smile reserved for attractive women who clearly didn't know who they were talking to. She looked up from her drink, something blue that probably cost more than Rex's monthly salary, and fixed him with eyes that were either green or gray depending on the lighting, and currently suggested she was reconsidering her life choices. "The Battle of Vega Prime," she said, taking a sip of her drink. "You said you were surrounded by 50, maybe 60 Kytherian shock troops. The after-action reports clearly stated that the enemy force consisted of 12 soldiers and a combat droid that malfunctioned halfway through the engagement." Rex blinked. This wasn't how these conversations usually went. Usually there was more swooning, or at least polite interest in his war stories. "And you would know this how, exactly?" he asked, that smile getting a little tighter around the edges. "Oh, you know," she said with a shrug that somehow managed to be both casual and deeply threatening. "Professional interest." The Regellian merchant made what might have been a snorting sound, though with their species it was hard to tell if it was amusement or just their regular breathing pattern. The service droid continued nodding. Rex decided to double down, because if there's one thing humans excel at, it's making bad situations worse through sheer stubborn pride. "Professional interest," he repeated. "Right. Let me guess, you're a military historian? Maybe you read about it in some declassified file?" "Something like that," she said. And there was definitely amusement in her voice now, though not the kind that suggested Rex was winning this conversation. "Well then, maybe you read about how I single-handedly held the eastern approach for 6 hours while reinforcements arrived," Rex continued, warming to his theme. "Or how I dragged 3 wounded Marines to safety under heavy plasma fire." She said noncommittally. "That's quite a story." "It's not a story," Rex said, a bit of heat creeping into his voice. "It's what happened. I've got the commendation to prove it." She tilted her head slightly, like she was studying him. "A commendation? How nice for you." "Damn right it's nice," Rex said. "Bronze Star with Valor. Not everyone can say they've got one of those." "No," she agreed. "Not everyone can." There was something in her tone that should have been a warning. Should have been a great big flashing sign saying, "Danger, proceed with extreme caution." But Rex was on a roll now, fueled by cheap alcohol and cheaper pride. "I don't suppose you've ever been in combat," he said, leaning against the bar with what he probably thought was a roguish smile. "Real combat, I mean, not just reading about it in files." The bar had gone quiet. Not dramatically quiet, not movie quiet, just the kind of quiet that happens when everyone suddenly finds their drinks very interesting and starts pretending they're not listening to what's clearly about to become either very entertaining or very messy. She set down her glass with the kind of care usually reserved for handling explosives. "Real combat," she repeated. "You know what I mean," Rex said. "The kind where people shoot back. Where you have to make split-second decisions that mean the difference between coming home or coming home in a box." She was very still now, and if Rex had been paying attention to anything other than the sound of his own voice, He might have noticed that the temperature in the bar seemed to have dropped about 10 degrees. "The kind where you watch your friends die," she said quietly. "Exactly," Rex said, apparently mistaking her tone for agreement. "The kind where you have to be a real soldier, not some desk jockey or—" She rolled up her left sleeve. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. She didn't slam her arm down on the bar or make any kind of show of it. She just pushed the fabric up to her elbow with the same casual motion someone might use to check the time. The scar ran from just below her wrist to somewhere past her elbow. It was old, the kind of old that spoke of serious medical attention and a long recovery, but it was still angry-looking. Still the kind of thing that made it clear that whatever had caused it had very much intended to kill her. "That's from the war your planet lost," she said. Rex's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, though no sound came out. If you've ever seen a fish trying to process advanced calculus, you'd have a pretty good idea of his expression. "I'm sorry," he finally managed. "What?" She took another sip of her drink, apparently unconcerned that she'd just dropped what amounted to a conversational nuclear weapon. "The Terran-Catherian conflict," she said as if she were discussing the weather. "Your species calls it the Outer Rim Wars, I believe. We called it Tuesday." The silence that followed could have been packaged and sold as a weapon of mass destruction. "You're—" Rex started, then stopped, his brain apparently hitting some kind of processing limit. "Kytherian, yes," she said. "Major Zara Veltar, formerly of the 3rd Assault Division, currently on medical leave, which is why I have the time to sit in human bars and listen to wildly inaccurate war stories." Rex looked like someone had just told him that gravity was actually optional, and he'd been participating in it by choice this whole time. "But you look—" He gestured vaguely at her general humanness. "Human?" she finished. "Ah, yes, the great revelation. We're not all 8-foot-tall insectoid monsters with acid for blood and a personal vendetta against your species' entertainment preferences." "I never said anything about entertainment," Rex protested weakly. "No, but you were thinking it," Zara said with what might have been a smile. "Humans always think about the cultural differences. It's become something of a stereotype among my people." The Rigelian merchant was no longer even pretending not to listen. The service droid had apparently decided this was worth recording for posterity, because its optical sensors were now focused intently on the conversation. "So when you said the war my planet lost," Rex began. "I meant exactly that," Zara said, though lost might be a strong word. "Failed to achieve any meaningful objectives while expending enormous resources and ultimately agreeing to a ceasefire that heavily favored our position is more accurate, but it doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well." Rex sat down heavily on the bar stool next to her. "But we won. The history books say we won." "Your history books," Zara pointed out. "Funny how that works." "But the casualty reports were classified beyond your clearance level," she said. "What you saw were the sanitized versions. The ones that made it look like humanity's first major interstellar conflict was a glorious victory, rather than an expensive lesson in why you should probably research your opponents before declaring war on them." Rex was quiet for a long moment, staring into his drink like it might contain answers to questions he wasn't sure he wanted to ask. "The Battle of Vega Prime," he said finally. "A minor skirmish," Zara said. "We sent a single reconnaissance unit to test your defenses. 12 soldiers and a combat droid that we knew was malfunctioning. We were curious to see how you'd respond. And? You responded with 3 full battalions, orbital bombardment, and enough firepower to sterilize a small moon," she said. "It was educational." Rex looked like he was trying to swallow something considerably larger than his pride. "So everything I did—" "Oh, you did it," Zara said, and her voice had lost some of its edge. "The commendation is real. You did hold that position, and you did save those Marines. The fact that you were vastly overestimating the threat doesn't make your actions any less brave or any less meaningful. Just less impressive," Rex said. "Different kind of impressive," she corrected. "Bravery in the face of overwhelming odds is one thing. Bravery in the face of what you believe to be overwhelming odds is something else entirely." Rex was quiet again, and this time the silence felt less like impending doom and more like, well, like someone thinking. "So why are you here?" he asked finally. "I mean, if we lost, if the war went the way you say it did, why are you drinking in a human bar and listening to humans tell stories about fighting your people?" Zara looked at her scar, then at Rex, then at her drink. "Because," she said, "war stories are rarely about the war." "What do you mean?" "Think about it," she said. "When you tell people about Vega Prime, what are you really talking about? The tactical situation? The geopolitical implications? The casualty figures?" Rex considered this. "No," he said slowly. I guess I'm talking about being scared and doing the job anyway. About looking out for the people next to me. Exactly, Zara said. And that's not uniquely human, Rex. That's just universal. The details change, but the core of it? The fear, the loyalty, the determination to do the right thing even when you're not sure what the right thing is? That's everywhere. Is that why you got hurt? He asked, gesturing at her scar. Doing the right thing? Zara laughed, though it wasn't entirely a happy sound. I got hurt because I was young and stupid and thought I understood warfare better than I actually did. I was part of a deep reconnaissance mission behind your lines, and I decided that stealth was for people who lacked commitment. What happened? I walked into a trap, she said simply. Your people had figured out our infiltration routes and set up an ambush. I should have retreated, called for backup, waited for a better opportunity. Instead, I decided to be a hero. Did it work? Define work, she said. I completed the mission, gathered the intelligence we needed, and made it back to friendly territory. I also spent the better part of a year in medical rehabilitation, and earned a lecture from my commanding officer that is still classified as a potential weapon of mass destruction. Rex found himself smiling. So you got in trouble for being too brave. I got in trouble for being too stupid, she corrected. Bravery and stupidity often look identical from the outside. The difference is usually a matter of luck and timing. And which were you? Both, she said. Definitely both. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Two soldiers from opposite sides of a war that maybe wasn't quite what either of them had thought it was. Can I ask you something? Rex said. You can ask. If the war went the way you say it did, if humanity didn't exactly cover itself in glory, why haven't we heard about it? I mean, it's been 5 years. Information has a way of getting out. Zara signaled the bartender for another round. That's actually a good question, she said. The answer is complicated. I'm not going anywhere. The short version is that it wasn't in anyone's interest to publicize the real outcome, she said. Your government needed the population to believe in human military superiority. Our government needed to maintain the impression that humanity was a credible threat worth taking seriously. And both sides needed to justify the enormous expenditures the war had required. So everyone just agreed to lie about it? Everyone agreed to allow certain misconceptions to persist, Zara said diplomatically. It's not the same thing. It sounds like the same thing. Welcome to interstellar politics, she said. It's even more complicated than the regular kind. Rex shook his head. So what happens now? I mean, if the war is over and everyone's agreed to pretend it ended differently than it actually did, where does that leave people like us? People like us? Soldiers. Veterans. People who were there. Zara considered this. We adapt, she said. We learn. We try to do better next time. Is there going to be a next time? Probably, she said. There usually is. But maybe, hopefully, it'll be different. Maybe we'll understand each other a little better. Is that why you're here? Rex asked. Understanding humans better? Part of it, she said. Though mostly I'm here because the medical board won't clear me for active duty until I complete their psychological evaluation program. And apparently, cultural immersion is part of that. How's that going? Well, she said, I've learned that humans have an impressive capacity for self-deception, a tendency to mythologize their own actions, and a remarkable ability to find meaning in chaos. That sounds about right, Rex said. What else? You're also surprisingly resilient, unexpectedly compassionate, and far more interesting than our intelligence reports suggested. Better than expected? Different than expected, she said. Which is usually better. Rex finished his drink and signaled for another. So what happens when your medical leave is over? Back to the war? There is no war, Zara pointed out. Officially, anyway. There's a ceasefire, a few minor border disputes, and a lot of very careful diplomacy. But unofficially? Unofficially, everyone's trying to figure out what comes next, she said. Peace is a lot more complicated than war. In war, at least you know who you're supposed to be shooting at. And in peace? In peace, you have to actually talk to people. Rex laughed. Is that what we're doing? Talking? I hope so, Zara said. The alternative is that I'm conducting unauthorized intelligence gathering on a foreign military officer, which would probably violate about 17 different treaties. And what would I be doing? Probably getting recruited as an unwitting intelligence asset, she said cheerfully. Though honestly, after listening to your version of Vega Prime, I'm not sure how much valuable intelligence you actually possess. Hey now, Rex protested. I know things. Such as? I know that Kytherian reconnaissance officers apparently have a sense of humor. he said. That's classified information, Zara said solemnly. I'm going to have to ask you to forget you heard that. Too late, Rex said. It's burned into my memory forever. In that case, I suppose I'll have to kill you. Rex paused, his drink halfway to his lips. You're joking, right? Zara's expression was perfectly neutral. What do you think? I think, Rex said carefully, that I'm going to assume you're joking and hope I'm right. Probably a safe assumption, she said. Though if I were planning to kill you, would you really expect me to give you advance warning? I would hope so. Professional courtesy and all that. Professional courtesy, she repeated. I like that. Very civilized. We try, Rex said, when we're not declaring war on people without researching them first. Everyone makes mistakes, Zara said. The important thing is learning from them. And have we? Learned from them, I mean. Zara looked around the bar, at the mixed crowd of humans and aliens, at the Rigelian merchant who was now openly eavesdropping on their conversation, at the service droid that had apparently developed opinions about interspecies relations. Ask me in a few years, she said. Fair enough, Rex said. So what do we do in the meantime? We keep talking, she said. We keep trying to understand each other. We keep looking for common ground. Such as? Such as the fact that we're both soldiers who signed up to protect people we care about, she said. Such as the fact that we've both made mistakes and lived to regret them. Such as the fact that we're both sitting in a dive bar trying to make sense of things that might not actually make sense. Rex nodded. That's something, I guess. It's a start, Zara said. They drank in silence for a moment, two former enemies discovering that they might have more in common than either had expected. Can I ask you another question? Rex said. Still not stopping you. The scar, he said, nodding at her arm. You said it was from the war humanity lost. But you also said it was from walking into a trap behind human lines. Yes? So, technically, wasn't that from a war humanity won? At least that particular engagement? Zara stared at him for a moment, then began to laugh. It started as a chuckle but quickly grew into full-blown laughter, the kind that attracted attention from across the bar, and made the Rigelian merchant wonder if humans and Kytherians expressed amusement in fundamentally different ways. You, she said when she could speak again, are absolutely right. So the scar is from a war my planet won? The scar, she said, wiping tears from her eyes, is from a war where everyone lost, everyone won, and everyone learned that the universe is far too complicated for simple narratives. That's not very catchy, Rex observed. No, she agreed. It's not, but it's probably closer to the truth. And what is the truth? The truth, Zara said, is that I got this scar because I was 23 years old and thought I knew everything. The truth is that you earned your commendation because you were scared and did your job anyway. The truth is that wars are complicated, people are complicated, and the universe has a sense of humor that tends toward the ironic. That's a lot of truth for one conversation, Rex said. I'm efficient, she said. I've noticed. They finished their drinks in companionable silence, the weight of revelation and understanding settling between them like a shared secret. So, Rex said finally, what happens now? Now, Zara said, you go home, think about what we've discussed, and probably spend the next few weeks questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself and the war. And you? I write a report about my cultural immersion experience that will probably get filed under unexpectedly enlightening, and continue my medical leave until some bureaucrat decides I'm psychologically fit for duty. And then? And then we see what the future brings, she said. Maybe our species will find a way to coexist peacefully. Maybe we'll find new things to fight about. Maybe we'll discover that the universe is even stranger than we thought. Any preferences? Peaceful coexistence would be nice, she said. Though I have to admit, a universe that's even stranger than we thought might be interesting too. Rex stood up, tossed some credits on the bar, and extended his hand. It's been educational, Major Veltar. She looked at his hand for a moment, then shook it. Likewise, Lieutenant Commander Hartwell. Maybe we'll run into each other again sometime, he said. In a galaxy this size? She said. What are the odds? Probably better than you'd think, Rex said. The universe seems to have a sense of humor about these things. That it does, she agreed. Rex headed toward the exit, then paused and looked back. Hey, Major? Yes? For what it's worth, I'm glad we lost. Zara raised an eyebrow. Why? Because if we'd won, you'd probably be dead, and I would have missed out on one of the most interesting conversations of my life. That's very philosophical of you, Lieutenant Commander. I have my moments, he said, and walked out into the corridor. Zara sat alone at the bar for a while, nursing the last of her drink and thinking about war, peace, truth, and the strange ways the universe had of bringing people together. "Excuse me, miss," said the Regelian merchant, finally working up the courage to approach her. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Are you really a Catherian officer?" "Yes," she said. "And the human really earned a commendation in the war?" "Yes." "And your people really won?" Zara considered this. "Define won," she said. The Regelian looked confused. "I thought winning and losing were fairly straightforward concepts." "So did I," Zara said. "Until tonight." She finished her drink, left some credits on the bar, and headed for the exit. Behind her, the Regelian merchant turned to the service droid and said, "I don't understand these warm-blooded species at all." The service droid, which had been programmed with the wisdom of ages and the customer service protocols of the rusty photon, replied, "Understanding is overrated, sir. Sometimes it's enough just to listen." And in a dive bar in the armpit of Kepler Station's commercial district, where the gravity generators hummed with occasional hiccups and the air recyclers gave everything a vaguely metallic taste that seemed like wisdom worth remembering. Outside in the corridor, Rex Hartwell walked toward the transport platform, his head full of new questions and his assumptions thoroughly demolished. Behind him, Major Zara Veltar headed in the opposite direction, her cultural immersion report already writing itself in her head. Neither of them knew they would meet again in 6 months, when a diplomatic crisis in the Vega system would require officers from both species who had experience working together. Neither of them knew that their conversation in the rusty photon would eventually be cited in 3 different academic papers on post-conflict psychology and interspecies relations. And neither of them knew that in the years to come, when people asked about the real outcome of the Terran-Kytherian conflict, they would both give the same answer. It's complicated. But that's a story for another time. Tonight, it was enough that 2 soldiers from opposite sides of a war had discovered that the universe was more complex, more nuanced, and more interesting than either of their governments had bothered to mention. And in a galaxy full of species learning to coexist, to communicate, and to find common ground in the most unlikely places, that seemed like progress worth celebrating. Even if it did happen in a dive bar where the gravity generators hummed with occasional hiccups, and the bartender was a reformed pirate with strong opinions about artistic differences. Some things, after all, never change. The end.